Deep beneath the soil of eastern Poland lies a chilling secret from the Dark Ages. Ancient graves reveal bodies bound and pinned by heavy iron to prevent rising. Local farmers discovered the first strange burial site entirely by accident during a routine excavation. They immediately noticed something was terribly wrong with how the skeletons were positioned. The skulls had been completely separated from the spines and placed carefully between the leg bones. This brutal decapitation was a calculated measure against the restless undead threat. Sharp sickles were securely placed across the fragile necks of the deceased individuals. If the corpse attempted to sit upright in the dark grave, the blade struck immediately. Heavy stones were frequently placed directly upon the jaws of suspected nocturnal monsters. Villagers believed this heavy weight would prevent the dead from biting the innocent living victims. Why did medieval communities fear these specific people enough to mutilate their remains? Historians suggest that physical deformities often triggered intense panic within isolated rural Polish agricultural villages. Epidemics swept through the European continent like a dark shadow during this era. Without modern medical knowledge, desperate people blamed the sudden deaths on supernatural demonic spiritual forces. Tuberculosis was rampant and caused victims to waste away while coughing up blood. To the uneducated peasant, this looked exactly like the work of a thirsty nocturnal vampire. A disease known as cholera also ravaged these vulnerable populations with shocking speed. A person could be healthy at dawn and dead before the sun finally went down. When terrified villagers opened graves to investigate, they misunderstood the normal decomposition process. Bloated bodies and receding gums created the illusion of freshly consumed blood and elongated fangs. Fear demanded action from the desperate survivors living in these deeply superstitious communities. Iron padlocks were forcefully attached to the big toes of the dead to prevent walking. The concept of the soul remaining trapped in the corpse terrified the living. They believed that a trapped soul would endlessly feed on surviving family members forever instead. In some bizarre cases, corpses were buried facing downward into the cold dirt. This ensured the monster would dig deeper into the earth if it suddenly awoke underground. Archaeologists unearthing these sites must meticulously document every single strange arrangement they find. Each iron nail and stone provides a silent clue about ancient human psychological trauma experienced. Not all the accused were outsiders or deformed strangers wandering through the towns. Sometimes wealthy individuals and beloved community leaders received this highly disturbing, posthumous, brutal final treatment. The church often condemned these desperate pagan rituals as acts of profound heresy. However, priests secretly blessed the sickles to appease the sheer terror of the local congregation. Science has finally given us the tools to examine these bones with precision. DNA analysis reveals that many suspected vampires were actually suffering from simple genetic physical disorders. Some victims showed signs of severe spinal conditions that caused unnatural hunching postures. This visible difference was more than enough to invite deadly suspicion from their paranoid neighbors. The soil chemistry in these specific regions naturally preserved the skeletons incredibly well. We can still see the brutal marks of heavy iron stakes on the fragile ribs. In one famous grave, an adult woman was found buried with a child. Both had their skulls completely crushed by enormous rocks to halt their dangerous supernatural resurrection. The legends say the first sign of a vampire was an unexplained illness. Families watched helplessly as their robust children grew pale and weak over several terrifying weeks. Nightmares plagued the restless sleep of those living near the designated cursed graveyards. People reported hearing scratching sounds coming directly from beneath the frozen winter graveyard burial dirt. To combat this acoustic terror, the living would pour holy water onto graves. They truly believed this sacred liquid burned the rotting flesh of the evil hidden demons. Dogs were entirely forbidden from walking across these uniquely isolated dark burial grounds. Animals acting strangely near a fresh grave was considered absolute proof of dangerous demonic presence. Garlic and strong herbs were firmly stuffed into the mouths of exhumed bodies. This pungent remedy was widely thought to neutralize the infectious breath of the dangerous undead. Modern anthropologists view these extreme burial practices through a lens of profound empathy. These were desperately terrified humans, attempting to assert control over entirely unpredictable, terrifying natural disasters. They were not primitive monsters, randomly attacking the corpses of their deceased neighbors. They were loving parents trying to protect their surviving children from a deadly invisible enemy. In the village of Drosko, a massive cemetery yielded multiple fascinating deviant burials. Some bodies had copper coins placed strategically inside their mouths to pay required spiritual tolls. The green oxidation of the copper coins left permanent stains on the teeth. This eerie green smile is the lasting signature of an ancient, protective, mysterious, magical ritual. We now understand that the real monster was the profound lack of knowledge. Disease was a completely invisible predator that left a long trail of immense human suffering. As night falls over these silent Polish fields, the wind carries ancient forgotten memories. The iron sickles remain safely locked away in museum displays far from the dirt. Yet, looking at those rusted blades invokes a deep, primal shiver of dread. They represent a time when humanity fought the unknown with desperate bloody acts of violence. Some graves show clear evidence of being repeatedly reopened over many subsequent years. Families constantly checked to ensure the terrifying corpse had not escaped its narrow earthly prison. If a sudden fresh tragedy struck the village, the graves were immediately suspect. The locals would dig furiously to inspect the decaying skeletal remains for any fresh blood. Sometimes, the head was removed entirely and thrown into a nearby flowing river. Running water was considered a pure barrier that supernatural beings could absolutely never safely cross. Imagine the overwhelming psychological toll of performing such gruesome acts on beloved relatives. The intense guilt and paralyzing fear must have haunted these innocent villagers for their lifetimes. Polish folklore is rich with tales of the strega, a terrifying vampiric owl. These local myths heavily influenced the horrific way real human bodies were ultimately physically handled. Children born with teeth already visible were immediately marked as potential future demons. This simple biological anomaly condemned them to a lifetime of suspicion and cruel, unjust marginalization. The sheer volume of these unusual graves implies a widespread regional panic epidemic. It was not a localized incident, but a massive cultural phenomenon spanning multiple dark centuries. As historians peel back the layers of earth, the dark truth steadily emerges. The real demons were ignorance, relentless disease, and the profound fragility of human daily life. Scientists carefully examined the specific wear patterns on the heavy iron cemetery sickles. The blunt edges indicate they were everyday farming tools repurposed for this gruesome macabre duty. The iron itself was a highly valuable commodity during the harsh medieval period. Burying it meant the terrified families sacrificed vital resources to ensure their ongoing collective safety. Forensic reconstruction of the skulls provides faces for these misunderstood victims of superstition. We can finally look into the eyes of the falsely accused medieval Polish tragic vampires. They were ordinary farmers, skilled weavers, and vulnerable children who succumbed to illness. Their only crime was dying during an age of widespread fear and absolute medical ignorance. Today, the quiet villages show no visible signs of their dark supernatural history. The terrifying graves are hidden safely beneath green grass and swaying modern golden agricultural wheat. But the excavated skeletons continue to tell a deeply fascinating and horrifying story. They remind us of the terrifying power that collective panic holds over objective rational thought. To label them simply as vampires is a terrible disservice to their memory. They are a profound testament to humanity, violently struggling against the brutal forces of nature. Through modern science, we grant them the profound dignity they were cruelly denied. We finally remove the heavy iron sickles and lift the oppressive, burdensome stones of fear. Every single bone fragment teaches us something valuable about the dark human psyche. It reveals our deepest fears and the desperate lengths we travel to truly find safety. Superstition is a powerful poison that rapidly infects the minds of frightened people. The Polish vampire burials stand as a chilling historical monument to this dangerous dark phenomenon. As researchers unearth more undisturbed graves, new horrifying details will inevitably emerge soon. The medieval earth has not yet surrendered all its heavily guarded, dark, historical, forgotten secrets. We must continue to study these grim artifacts with immense respect and dedication. They offer an unparalleled window into the terrified souls of our ancient European historical ancestors. The chilling image of the sickle across the throat remains powerfully striking today. It visually defines the extreme intersection of profound human fear and aggressive physical protective violence. We no longer fear the dead rising from their graves beneath the moonlight. However, we must always guard against the infectious hysteria that originally condemned these tragic victims. The lessons buried in Poland echo loudly through the corridors of modern time. Whenever society faces inexplicable threats, the dangerous urge to find a supernatural monster immediately awakens. By remembering the medieval Polish vampires, we honor the truth of their existence. They were merely unfortunate casualties in a relentless hidden war against disease and profound ignorance. Their violently desecrated remains serve as a grim warning for all future generations. We must constantly seek logic and compassion when confronted by the terrifying dark unknown shadows. Ultimately, the mystery of the vampire burials has been solved by forensic science. Yet the haunting emotional weight of those heavy iron sickles will never truly fade away. The shadows of the past stretch across the ancient cemeteries of rural Poland. They whisper a tragic tale of fear, desperately seeking peace beneath the frozen cold earth. May these forgotten souls finally rest without the weight of stones and iron. Their terrifying medieval ordeal is over, and their true historical story is finally widely known.